Hello and welcome to the Max MPS Radio. My name is Jan Frisse, and today I'm honored to have Brett Freeman on the podcast again, actually the third time. So I don't think you have to introduce yourself. Brett, we will talk about current plans for you to compete. We will talk about prep mindset and also about inspirations in life, in bodybuilding and in life in general, I would assume. So how you doing, man? How's life going?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for having me on again for the third time, I believe.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, life is much better compared to the last time that we did, hop on this podcast and talk.
Mm-hmm.
The wife is in great health. So for anybody that didn't tune into the last one, my wife was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. Since then, she has kicked its ass. So she's doing really good. Myself, I'm doing great. I'm looking to potentially get back up there on the stage for the 2022 season, since I have not competed since 2019 Worlds. So,
same, man.
Yeah, so, I'm excited.
So you just pretty much spoiled the first question.
I did. I spoiled it.
You spoiled it. So you are going to compete. You are going to compete. Could you just basically give out like informations about your prep this year? What shows are you aiming for? What coach are you potentially working with? Mm-hmm. And pretty much plans for this year.
Yeah, so since I stepped off stage, I took everything back into my own hands. I did have Eric Helms help me out with some programming. So he coached me from last March till November. So almost a year. Incredibly helpful. Also, Nick Lacamelli helped me on the physical therapy side of things.
Interesting.
And that was more of like a powerlifting hybrid style of training. But throughout the course of my improvement season, I do believe that I made the gains necessary to warrant dieting again. So I ended up sitting down, discussing with the wife, since we do plan on, having children and expanding our family after this year. And we both agreed that 2022 would be the most ideal year for me to compete before things, get kicked up a notch and I have to prioritize, my family before this selfish bodybuilding endeavor. So we both agreed that instead of myself self-coaching, because that's what I did that in 2017 and I self-coached myself in 2019 up until the 6-week out mark. I am going to delegate that power to Cliff Wilson again for this upcoming year.
Mm-hmm.
So Cliff and I will begin April 15th. That's when my prep will officially start. And we are eyeing the fall shows. So September all the way up until November.
So you are actually starting with Cliff. You're starting your prep with Cliff, or did you just start it and then the April date was just the beginning with Cliff?
Nope. So for the
are you already dieting?
I am not. No, I'm still. Okay. I'm kind of maintaining. Mm-hmm. I've maintained, the past month since I didn't track everything to the gram. So the past week has been the first week I've actually placed food on a food scale since 2019 Worlds.
Perfect.
Yeah. And I owe that to my wife. She took that food scale away and I used my eyeballs, and that's what I preached during the off season.
What's your stats then? Like, could you just give like an outline of what you are actually weighing right now, or what you will weigh at the beginning of prep, and then what you are aiming for? Like, what was your last stage weight?
Yeah, absolutely. So the heaviest. So I did end up getting up to. I'm going to do this for kilograms for people. I ended up getting up into the 185, 190 pound region during my off season, and I hung out there for about a year. So that's about 86 kilos.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the prettiest at first, but something that I've, taken from Lyle McDonald and just from others before. I believe that you can harden up and improve body composition at a certain body weight. So that was something that I had wanted to do for the longest time. And I realized that this is going to be the longest off season I'm going to have in quite some time. So you might as well, make the most of it. So I embraced getting fat. I mean, fat by bodybuilding standards. And I chilled between 185 and 190 and just focused on driving up training performance, but then also just fine tuning everything from a nutritional standpoint. Now, that would be about 45 pounds to 50 pounds over my 2019 stage weight. The lightest that I weighed in was, I think, 143 pounds, which would be...
your highest weigh-in is your current weigh-in as well, your current weight?
Current, I'm about 180 to 182.
Okay.
So 81 kilos. 81 kilos. And I can compete at about 64 kilos, 64 to 65.
Okay, so that's like around 16 kg loss in the time frame from late or mid-April. Was it late or mid-April?
Mid-April.
Mid-April to the fall season.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And one thing that will be different though this time around is body composition is extremely different at 180 compared to 2019 180. Night and day different.
As it should be.
Yes, as it should be.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, then I failed.
Yeah, man. Having a better body comp at like higher weigh-ins or like at higher areas of weight, where it was before, where it probably or where it maybe wasn't the prettiest, but now is better. Like after a prolonged off season is always a good sign.
Yeah, agreed.
So yeah, man, looking forward to actually see you on stage again. I think 2019 was a pretty wild year, man.
Yeah.
Definitely good memories
Big time.
for that season.
Yeah, I just miss the community. I really do. I miss the camaraderie. I miss being backstage. I miss going to shows. I mean, I was able to during the pandemic and last year and everything, but it hasn't been the same.
Looking forward to obviously seeing you on stage in fall, but also our little trip in my coaching US season, probably more like late summer.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to link up, man. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. So, do you have anything else that you want to talk about in regards to your prep?
Oh yeah. So the WNBF allows us to cross over finally. So what I have always wanted to do is I want to compete against the best, even if that means I'm going to lose, because that's what fuels me to get better. So I want to compete against everybody that I can possibly compete against. So I do plan on competing in some OCB shows this year, in an attempt to gain my OCB pro card. And then I'm also debating the Mr. America, which is, I believe, in September. So that's another. Philip Ricardo Jr. actually reached out to me and asked if I was competing there. And I told him I wasn't, because I wasn't sure if I would be able to. But it has been confirmed that WNBF pros can do OCB and Mr. America. So what
federation is the Mr. America?
That's a really good question. Let me look up really quick. I'm not too sure. I think it's its own sanction. AAU. I just know it's one of the oldest, most prestigious shows in America. So,
but is it like a drug? Is it like a drug tested show?
Yeah, it's drug tested.
Okay.
So it was first held in 1939 on July 4th. So pretty old.
Interesting.
But I think Mishak's going to be there, so it would be incredible to get whooped by those athletes.
Yeah, I mean, good luck, man.
Thank you. I'm going to need it.
So are you going to compete in Worlds again?
Yes, so the end goal is Worlds.
Cool.
End goal is Worlds. And I hope they have a Bantam class again. And I hope they don't put everybody into that lightweight class. Too much muscle. I did win the lightweight class in 2017.
Yeah, you did.
It's
and I think that's pretty cool as well. Pretty damn cool, man.
But I don't think I'd be able to do that again. I just, not with the evolution of the athletes. I don't think so.
Man, let's see. Definitely help for you.
Yeah, big time.
So when we actually, I mean, I know that you have done quite the evolution in terms of your mindset in prep from your first season to your last season in 2019, and I would assume this year's season as well. So when we're actually talking about prep mindset, how do you manage stresses and like quote unquote dark days that come with prep nowadays versus back in the days? And what would you actually advise for the younger Brad Freeman in the early 2010s?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say my mindset has necessarily shifted that much. I think it's become a lot more family oriented and a lot more sacrificial and compromising as of late. But I mean, I've talked with Ben Howard about this. When we get down to those 4 to 6 week out mark, that's kind of where things do have to shift in terms of priorities. And that's kind of where me and the wife have to better communicate in regards to, I have to be selfish for this final 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. Things might not be the same as they used to be, but we're both on the same page. Whereas in the past, it would be perceived as it's selfish, it's narcissistic. And I would try to balance and wear all of these hats at the same time that it would just, mentally burn me out. And so mindset wise though, I mean, especially as a teen, I was always able to kind of embrace the suffering, the pain aspect that comes with dieting. Maybe it's environmental, but that is just something that I've always prided myself with just throughout the course of my career. Because in 2011, I'm 21 years old. I continued to prep after my dad died. I buried my dad 2 weeks out from a show, and that didn't deter me at all from my goal that I set out. And then even in 2017, same thing occurred. I almost died at the beginning of prep. So that kind of like flipped a switch in my mind. And, I realized like, oh shit, everybody's clock is ticking. If I don't, put forth 100% in every single thing that I do, be it relationships, work, bodybuilding, I'm wasting my time. And so I try to apply that to every prep, but also every single off season now moving forward. And then I would say, it even changed a little bit in 2019, because at the beginning of 2019, my grandmother died. And then one of my close coworkers died within the same week. And that was the week that I started my contest prep. And so that kind of fueled the fire and mentality shift for 2019 to, again, show me that life is short. And if you're going to do something, follow through with it 100%. And you do have to realize that it is going to be hard. It's going to be difficult, but you just have to continue to push forward and just keep moving forward. And same thing, occurred after 2019. So after I won my second world title, I'm at the highest of highs. The pandemic happens, and then I'm hit with the lowest of lows again because my wife gets diagnosed with cancer. So again, my whole perspective on life changed yet again. It's, again, time is very valuable. So if I'm going to do something, it has to be with, I have to give 100% towards every single thing that I do. And again, time is very valuable and time is very short. So if I'm going to set out and do something, it has to be 100%. There's no half-assing anything. And when I look at the dieting aspect and I look at people that, have those bad days or those dog days, they don't realize that they signed up for it. They signed up to starve themselves. They signed up, to embark on a 6-month contest prep. So the only thing that you can really bitch about is, the only thing you can complain about, is, the fact that you signed up for it. It's, you're doing this to yourself. So the only person that you can really blame is the person in the mirror. And it always boggles my mind that if this is the most adverse, thing that somebody is going to face in life, like they have a lot coming to them just in terms of like reality checks. because this is, I mean, we're training in air conditioned. I mean, look at what the pandemic did to people. They started freaking out because they can't train in their state of the art facilities, and they can't train with dumbbells or suboptimal equipment. And then you see those who actually have a passion for this sport, and then you see those that, you know, they think they have a passion for this sport. And I think COVID really, you know, opened up people's eyes, like, oh shit, maybe I'm not as invested in this sport as I thought it once was. And I think it separated not the title of pros and amateurs, but those that are willing to do anything that it takes when they have a passion for something. And it kind of weeded out those that thought they had the passion for it.
I think it's just, you can, by the way, absolutely curse on this podcast.
Okay.
I don't mind. So please go forward. I think it's just a big privilege to actually do this.
Yeah,
I would assume that in all those dark times or dark time frames besides prep, when all those things that you just mentioned happened, you were even more ingrained in that mindset that prep is such a privilege.
It is, and I think no, it's the biggest privilege that we have, and I see those that came from, let's say somebody was spoon-fed or privileged growing up. You can kind of tell that their shell is going to break when they contest prep, because this is one of the hardest things that they're ever going to do. But then if you see somebody that came from maybe an environment that wasn't as supportive, this is going to be the only thing that they can really cling to, but also prove themselves. So they're going to give 100% towards it, I have found. And I mean, obviously it depends and it's individual.
Yeah,
it really is. But that's, you know, kind of my, you know, POV on it, just from what I've seen the past decade plus of athletes that have came and gone within this sport.
Yeah. I think just keeping in mind that it's such a privileged thing to do.
Yeah.
And actually knowing what actually comes when those like last weeks actually arrive, those 4 to 6 weeks. Maybe for first time it's a little bigger time frame. Maybe it shifted from like a 4 to 6 week to 4 to 8 or 6 to 8 or something like that, or maybe even 6 to 10 or something like that. But definitely be prepared and then ready to accept it, and then actually also kind of embracing the grind, as cheesy as that sounds. It's a pretty I mean, you ultimately, it's part of the process. It's actually part of your progress, and I think it's also pretty nice. Is probably not the right word for it, but it's pretty it's an amazing thing to endure, actually, to just get through and then be proud of yourself after you have done it.
It's very enlightening.
Because it's such a challenge. Yeah, it is. It is definitely a big challenge. And I mean, obviously, or I think, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that for you, it was probably harder in the first few seasons than it is right now. Do you think it got easier over time, or do you think that maybe it was equalized by you just pushing harder at the end and just getting leaner from season to season?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. That's a really good question. I actually do think it did get easier. But I think the stakes are higher. So the pressure in which I place upon myself might be, a little bit more difficult because I do have higher standards for myself. But I still, and this is something I want the younger generation, anybody that's about to, embark on their first prep, or maybe they just turned pro, don't lose the hunger that you had as an amateur. That's something that I will always preach and something that I always keep. I'm just as hungry as I was when I was 18, 19, trying to get a pro card. I'm just as hungry as I was during my second season, my third season, and my fourth season. Never get complacent. So if the prep does get easier, like you get more, adapted and acclimated to starving yourself, but it's never going to be easy 2, 3, 4 weeks out. I mean, everybody has those bad days.
Yeah, I mean, I find it interesting that you actually got more strict over seasons, at least for the last part in prep. because beforehand you were trying too much of doing everything and prioritizing everything, where maybe bodybuilding should be maybe not the biggest priority, but like a pretty high priority in those last in that final strive of prep. I remember that you were doing like a job where you were around food all the time. So how did you manage to do important stuff outside of bodybuilding, outside of training in the past, or even in your prep this year? How do you usually manage that in terms of doing the task at hand, but also supplying that with nutrition, for example?
So for anybody that didn't know, I've worked in the food industry for 10 plus years, assistant banquet manager. So I prioritize in weddings. So I've always worked, an outside job that's unrelated to bodybuilding for the majority, of my career while bodybuilding. And I take the Whitaker approach of bodybuilding's last on the priority list. So family and work are always first in the priority. So obviously I have to sacrifice my own time, to make myself available for others. And that's not just being physically available, but that's also being emotionally available as well. It's something that I've improved upon over the years quite a bit. But how I do it is it's funny because I was talking about this earlier, is I structure my training around my wife's and my stepson's. So if I know, he will always take precedence over my schedule. So if he has practice or if he has a game, he's more important. He will always be more important. And that goes for academics too. So if he has school, that's more important, obviously. And the same thing would go for the wife. If she has appointments, which she has quite a bit, those are going to be my main priority. And I'm going to do everything that I can in my power to, be by her side, but then also so I am physically and emotionally available for her, but then also my stepson. Now, even when working, 16-hour shifts, and I don't have a set in stone schedule, so a lot of it's week to week basis. So that has, improved my ability to be a lot more flexible and reactive, but also improving my time management skills. And that's something that I'm very big on is, time management, but then also being on time. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been in the back of the house or seen what it's like when a wedding is going on, but when you're expediting food, everything is to the minute. So it's very precise and detailed, very similar to a peak week. And so I would never, get any time to really sit down and eat. So the majority of my meals, at my place of work, it would, be whey, it would be pretzels, it would just be food sources that aren't necessarily the most optimal from a satiation standpoint, when you're 4 weeks out, but hey, you have to make it work somehow. And that's always been my mindset that's my mindset is you're going to get it done. If you want to get it done, you're going to find any way to get it done. And there'd be 16-hour days where I don't want to train or do cardio after work, but I have to. You just have to at some point, And that's more of a mindset, and that's more mental than it really is physical, hunger or even physical, pain. And it was a very, labor intensive job. So even despite like me having more of a management role, I was still, helping push dance floors that were 600 pounds up a hill. I was still helping out my team because you have to lead by example. Yeah, gotta lead by example.
Jeez. So I think with your experience, it's just a different kind. You're so used to it, you just do it.
Yep.
Whether, for example, a first timer, I always tell my athletes that if they have an important task at hand, I mean, obviously you want to prioritize your food around your workout, your peri-workout window. But if you have an important task where you have to perform intellectually, or you just have to be really, really present and be at your best, put some food before, man, especially in later stages.
It's funny you mentioned that because that was something I picked up on during my 2011 season. And it was, I would always, especially for work, I would try to have one of my biggest meals before work so I wouldn't be an asshole to my coworkers or to those around me, because you got to stay mindful. Like, they don't know you're dieting. They don't care that you're dieting.
Yeah.
They're there to work. They're there to work like you too. And so it's very selfish, you know, to put somebody in that position just because you're starving yourself. So I agree 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that's a good idea. That's a good, just a good practical application of what to do with your carbs throughout your whole day. So you don't go into your work low carb. I mean, maybe you have to. Maybe you don't have any carbs at all.
Yeah.
Or maybe
sometimes you do,
or at least a really small amount. So, but then you will probably adapt to it anyway. So definitely be cautious where to place food and keep it to the tasks that are important. And obviously training is important, but there are other important things.
Yep. And I mean, I can remember, Cliff pushed me so hard my final 6 weeks, and that was the lowest my calories and carbs ever got. So to be taking in 100 to 120 grams of carbs when you're hitting almost 20,000 steps a day, that was brutal. But
and you're already pretty lean. Okay,
yeah, already pretty lean.
Yeah, already pretty lean.
But my mind is stronger though. Mind is stronger than the body. So if you want it, you will do it.
Good, man.
Yeah.
So if we are talking about life and training, so not only bodybuilding related, but maybe it's like a question that is absolutely bodybuilding related, but also like in general, life in general.
Yeah.
I think it's a more broader question. Why do you think it's a better idea to get inspired by character traits or attributes from people rather than having role models in itself? And I think we talked about that in the last podcast briefly, or maybe it was off air. I'm not sure.
It may have been off air, but yeah, it's something that I think I disagreed with you on at first, but then over the past 2 years, my perspective was changed after kind of taking a deep dive. And we're all human, and that's where a lot of people fail to realize that we're all human at the end of the day. So placing somebody atop a pedestal and idolizing them as this god or this somebody that's untouchable, I think it's very naive. And instead of wanting to be that person, I think you can take away traits from them, perhaps to make you yourself. But I think at the end of the day, like, you need to have your own identity of yourself, and that's something that's, it could be an American thing, but we idolize, influencers or the Kardashians or this, that. I grew up loving Eminem. So like, that's where I've taken a lot of my inspiration from, but I'm not him. And I'm also never going to put him atop this pedestal, and I'm never going to freak out in front of him. I'm going to respect him for, inspiring me as a kid, but he's not a god. Nobody is, a god on this, this earth.
So you're probably the better bodybuilder than Eminem, man.
Hey, man, he's jacked. Have you seen his glutes? He's got some pretty nice glutes. No,
I'm not even sure about the rap skills, man. Didn't you even?
I used to rap once upon a time.
Yeah.
Right, Mac?
Man.
But even that could even go for bodybuilders you look up to. And I've done the same thing. I've placed Whitaker atop this pedestal where it's like, we're both human. So why would I roll out the red carpet for somebody? I respect the hell out of him. Like, don't get me wrong, but he's not better than any one of us. We all bleed, we all die. So
yeah, I think if you have somebody who you like really look up to, and having the guy or girl on such a high pedestal, and like looking up to the guy or girl rather than trying to be on the same level, I think you will probably get disappointed at a certain point, especially if you only follow the guy or girl via Instagram or social media in general, and then maybe meet up in person later on. So I think people fail to realize that all the celebrities, all the bodybuilders, all the coaches, all the athletes are just humans as well.
Yeah.
They're just
And
normal as we are. Like,
we all eat, we all use the bathroom, we all shower. It's funny because when I first won my first world title, somebody asked me if things would change. And I'm like, nope, I still have to go to work tomorrow. I still got to pay my rent, the next week. Like, it doesn't leave anybody entitled. It's a hobby.
Yeah, just imagine winning your world title in natural bodybuilding and then becoming super cocky at work or whatever.
I'll never forget when I won it and I came into my work the next day or something. And I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, how'd your show go? I'm like, oh, I won my world title. They're like, cool. You still got to do your fucking job. I'm like, ah.
Oh man, yeah, wrong sport, man.
I know. My mom, they lied to me.
So, I think just getting inspired and then potentially adapt certain traits rather than looking up to the whole person itself is probably the better way to go for. And also, I mean, if you try to replicate in itself, you will just, at best, you will be a bad copy because you just can't be the person.
Yep.
And it will be unauthentic. And I think building yourself as a person, like tripling down on your strengths and building your weaknesses and using certain, like, get inspired by people. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely. You can take inspiration, but then rather take like certain traits from people rather than the whole personality. I think, and I even think that's probably something a lot of younger people do, that they really have like a role model in itself and try to replicate things. And I think it's probably good to have a high quality mentor early in life, but you shouldn't try to be them.
That's a good one. So I wanted to be Nunez for the longest time. I wanted to be Dorian Yates for the longest time. And then I noticed when I tried to channel that Alberto or that Dorian, it didn't come off authentic. And it's like, oh shit, that's not me. I need to be myself.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of influence from Alberto, and there's a ton of influence from those that I've looked up to or worked with or studied under, but it's that's what made me, me today over time.
Yeah, and also if time comes, move. Like if you have a mentor who teaches you thing, always appreciate the person. But when you think you have learned a lot and you should move on, then do it, man.
Yeah, it's kind of like the karate. Like if you learn everything from this, sensei, why continue to beat a dead horse if you could learn and expand your knowledge or your skill set, elsewhere? And that should be the goal, is just evolving as a person and learning as much as you can just to continue to develop to be a better person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something like I actually really like the self-offering program from John Peterson, where you just basically write down your past, your current, and your future, and just basically writing down how your life should go for. Yeah, man. The Bible.
The Bible.
The Bible.
Great, phenomenal book.
So, yeah, I mean, phenomenal book by Dad.
Yeah.
So I actually really like that program because you're basically just writing down how your life should go, and it's also a check on yourself, who you are actually. Like he also has a personality test that I think was pretty valuable for myself to do. Dude, that kind of.
Is it the Myers-Briggs, or am I thinking of something different? He wasn't. He didn't do. It wasn't the Myers-Briggs test, was it, or was it?
It's like a
personality test.
five personality trait test or something like that. Yeah, actually, I think his one is just like a test that already existed, but his one gives you like a different not outcome, but like a different interpretation, or it just compares it to a certain amount of other people that did the test. I think that's the main difference. But you will find it. I think it's the 5 traits personality test or something like that.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. Disclaimer: just Google Jordan Peterson personality test. You will probably find it. That one was pretty. I mean, I don't think it was like necessarily eye-opened, but it reassured a lot of things. And I think knowing you as a person and in depth and knowing who you are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, is super important to then move forward and actually progress on those things.
No, agreed 100%. I'm going to actually look into this. The Myers-Briggs is actually, it's a 16 personality test. It's a little bit more older. INTJ, INFJ, those.
Yeah, it's the 5-factor model of personality.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to do this after this podcast, actually.
Do it, man. So just let people know where they can find your content.
Yeah.
Like just plug away.
Plug away, okay. Thanks for having me on, man. You can contact me or find me at ATP Performance LLC.com or on Instagram at BAFTUB. That's BAFTUB.
What was the story behind Bathtub again? Did I ask?
So, you may have asked, but it's so long story short. My original username used to be Reflex. It was my old rap name, and it was also I've always had really good reflexes as a kid. So on the old bodybuilding.com forums, I used to always post in the MISC, and I got my account banned. So I had to create another username, and I always took pictures by the bathtub. And my initials are BAF. So Brett Anthony Freeman, tub, bathtub. So
that's perfect, man. Perfect ending.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. See you next time. I think see you maybe even in the States. Maybe even at BAFs.
In the States? At BAFs? Yeah, I can't wait. I'm gonna pop the cherry.
Pop a cut sandwich.
Pop a cut sandwich. I can't wait.
See you, man.
See you, man. Thank you for having me.